Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. Today we're going to discuss a fundamental question. Do we actually need government, or would a completely free society work better? What would happen if all laws disappeared tomorrow? Would society collapse, or would people find a way to organize themselves? Now, I'm not going to share you my own personal thoughts about this. Rather, I will present you the most typical arguments that exist on both sides. Alright, so once again, the central question is, do humans need government control, or would true freedom or anarchy lead to a better society? Okay, so we have two sides. We have government control, which is about authority, laws, and structure. And the core idea behind this is that without control, society collapses into chaos. And people need rules, they need enforcement, and they need authority. And then the other side, obviously, is anarchism, which is about maximum freedom. And the core idea behind that is people can organize themselves voluntarily without coercion. And government creates more harm than it prevents. Alright, so here are 5 strong arguments for government control. Argument 1. Humans are not naturally cooperative. When there are no rules, and when there is no enforcement, and when there are no consequences, well, then self-interest tends to override cooperation, especially when resources or power are at stake. Why? Well, people want safety, they want resources, they want status. And if there is no authority, if there is nothing stopping someone from taking advantage, even if you are cooperative, you can't be sure others are, right? And this creates a kind of mutual distrust. Here's a simple example. Imagine 10 people stranded on an island with limited food. And at first, they all agree to share the limited amount of food, and that's a cooperation. But then, one person secretly takes extra food at night, and another person notices this and starts doing the same, and then trust breaks down, and very soon people will start guarding their food. And then stronger individuals intimidate the weaker ones, and eventually groups form for protection. So the system shifts from cooperation to suspicion to competition to domination. Okay, so here's the second argument. Laws create stability and predictability. So laws create a predictable framework where people can plan their lives. Without laws, you don't know if agreements will be respected. You don't know if your property is safe. And you don't know how others will behave. And with laws, there are clear rules. There are known consequences, and there is enforcement. And that predictability is what allows complex society to exist. Now, why does predictability matter? Well, imagine trying to live in a world where a deal might or might not be honored, or someone could take your stuff without consequences, or there is no agreed way to resolve disputes. Well, you would constantly have to defend yourself, double-check everything, and avoid trusting others. And that creates fear and inefficiency. Here is a concrete example. Imagine you're going to buy a car. Now, in a world with laws, let's say you have to pay $10,000, right? Then the seller must give you the car. And if they don't, well, you can simply go to court, and then the law enforces the agreement. And as a result, well, you feel safe making the deal, even with a stranger. Now, in a world without laws, so you pay $10,000 for the car, and then the seller, well, he decides to simply keep the money and not give you the car. So what can you do? Are you going to fight them? Are you going to fight the person, or are you going to hope that others will support you? And then suddenly You only trade with people, you will eventually only trade with people you trust personally, and large-scale trade becomes very difficult. So the key insight here is that laws don't just punish bad behavior, they reduce uncertainty. And reducing uncertainty increases trust and it enables cooperation between strangers. And also it allows economies and societies to scale. Right, here's the third argument, which is protection from violence. So in any society, conflicts are inevitable. There is always going to be theft, assault, and disputes over resources or honor. And the question is, who has the right to use force, and how is it controlled? Now, with government, the state has a monopoly on legitimate violence. And there are institutions like police and courts which decide how conflicts are handled. Now, without governments, well, only individuals or a group can handle it themselves. Now, why this matters? Well, humans have a strong instinct for retaliation. If someone harms you, then you want justice or you want revenge. But without a neutral authority, this can escalate. Well, let me give you an example. Here, so in a world without a justice system, let's say person A steals from person B, and then person B retaliates by attacking person A, and then person A's family and friends retaliate against person B, and then person B's family and friends also responds again, and this escalates and keeps escalating. So we have a cycle of revenge, and then feuds, and then this ends with long-term violence. So this kind of pattern has historically existed in, for example, clan-based societies. And then in a world with a justice system, well, it's a lot more simple. When person A steals from person B, well, then person B reports it, and then the police investigates it, and then the court decides punishment. So the result is there is no personal revenge needed, and the conflict is contained and resolved. Right, now argument number 4, coordination at scale. So small groups can coordinate informally. We have families, local communities, and small businesses. But as a society scales to millions of people, coordination becomes much harder. You will need long-term planning, you will need massive resource allocation, you will need cooperation between strangers who will never meet. And so the argument is, without centralized coordination, so with government, then large-scale systems either fail or become very inefficient. Here is an example. It's an example about infrastructure, building roads, etc. So in a world with government, well, taxes are collected from millions of people, and a central authority they plan where roads go, they plan how they connect to cities, they plan maintenance and maintenance schedules, and roads are built even in less profitable areas. And as a result, well, we have a connected network that benefits everyone. And in a world without government, so purely voluntarily, well, who builds the roads? Will it be private individuals? Will it be companies? So we have some problems. People may not want to pay if they can still use the road. And companies only build where profit is guaranteed. And, well, rural or poor areas may be ignored. So there is no unified plan, and so it becomes disconnected, or there will be inefficient networks. And so you risk ending up with fragmented infrastructure and gaps in essential services. All right, then the fifth argument is the historical argument. This argument is basically saying, if there isn't a strong authority holding things together, well, something else will take its place, and often that something is violent. Here are 5 strong arguments against government, so pro-anarchism. Argument number 1, power corrupts. The claim is the more power someone has over others, the more likely it is that power will be abused. Why? Well, power reduces accountability. It creates distance from ordinary people, and it gives the ability to act without immediate consequences. And over time, this can shift behavior. It starts from serving people to eventually controlling people. Now, how corruption actually happens? Well, it's not always cartoon villain evil. It's often gradual. It starts with small justifications like this is necessary for stability or it's for the greater good. And then we continue with expansion of control. There is going to be more surveillance, more restrictions, and there's going to be less tolerance for opposition. And then it grows into there will be more suppression. Critics are silenced. Power becomes harder to challenge. So the system slowly shifts from protection to control to domination eventually. All right, the second argument is freedom is inherently valuable. So this argument says that freedom isn't just useful, it's actually morally valuable in itself. So even if control works better, it might still be wrong. Why? Well, because your life is yours. Your choices define who you are. And being forced to act against your will undermines your autonomy. And so in this view, freedom is not a tool, it's actually a right. Okay, so the third argument is voluntary cooperation does work. And this argument says cooperation doesn't need to be forced. Humans naturally organize and help each other when it makes sense. Instead of seeing society as something that must be controlled, this view sees it as something that can emerge organically. Well, there is some everyday evidence of this. We already live in systems that are largely voluntarily, like families. There are no laws forcing you to care for your children. Yet people naturally nurture, they naturally share, and naturally sacrifice. So cooperation here is driven by empathy and connection, not coercion. Okay, the fourth argument is governments are inefficient. The claim is large centralized systems tend to become slow, wasteful, and disconnected from real needs. Why? Well, decisions are made far from the people affected, and there are layers and layers of administration, bureaucracy. They build up. Administration builds up, and there is less direct accountability than in competitive systems. Here's a simple example. So imagine that you want to start a small business. Now, in a world with heavy bureaucracy, you need to fill out multiple forms, you have to wait for permits, you have to go through inspections, and you have to deal with delays. And this can take months. Now, in a world with a more flexible system, there are fewer barriers, there are faster decisions, and so it's easier to act and adapt. So the key insight is the bigger the system, the harder it is to run efficiently. You see, governments they don't fail because it does nothing. It fails because it tries to do everything, and it becomes slow in the process. All right, now the final fifth argument is moral argument against coercion. This argument says that all laws, no matter how reasonable, are ultimately enforced through coercion. And coercion involves force or the threat of force. So even in a peaceful society, it looks like this. You are told to follow a law. And if you refuse, well, you get fined. And if you refuse again, well, there are stronger penalties. And eventually, you can be physically forced. You can be arrested, you can be imprisoned. So at the foundation of every law is comply or face consequences enforced by force. Now, why is this morally questioned? Well, normally we think violence is wrong, forcing others is wrong. And so the anarchists will ask the question, why does it suddenly become acceptable when an institution does it? You know? Right. So this is already a long video, right? Yeah. So I'm going to end this video right now. I will talk a lot more about this in future videos. And I'm going to end this video with a couple of questions. Do you trust people enough to live without authority? Or do you think rules and force are the only things holding society together? And if all laws disappear tomorrow, what do you honestly think would happen? Well, let me know what you think in the comment section. And I will see you in the next video.